Hello. All right, so I've been noticing a lot, lately, but my whole life to a certain degree. People seem to have just this totally unrealistic and false idea of what democracy is about and what it means to convince other people and what are the chances that we get on the same page. Um, and as if, you know, the right idea should eventually win out. Of course, everybody thinks they've got the right idea, so they're sitting around expecting eventually it'll, work out that my idea is the last standing, because, of course, the best idea will be the only one standing. And they spend a lot of time convincing others and have a lot of faith in that. And then when that doesn't work out, they get really frustrated, but they never give up this idea that, the point is to convince others. Right. That's actually a dangerous idea, and and it's very anti-American because it's anti-individualistic. It's anti-democracy. Democracy, my view of democracy, and I think really it's an inherent part of the whole point of democracy, is that we're not all supposed to agree. It's a system that we use to peacefully have differences, right? And ideally, a federated system would be a way to deal with this in the United States. If the whole country can agree on something, fine. The whole country could share a rule, a regulation, a law, a way of life. And if they don't, then smaller units can find agreement, right? And then only those units that find a certain amount of agreement go ahead and use that. Maybe they convince others over time. Maybe over time the whole nation adopts it. But maybe not. Because as I've pointed out, things come down to people's preferences. I think the immigration issue has a lot to do with people's preferences. What they want from their local environment, what they want in terms of what they think is right and wrong. So not just directly their own desires. Like I think a cosmopolitan city with multiple cultures and ethnicities from all over the world, that's what makes cities, that's one of the positive things about cities. Other people might not think so. And not moving to the city might not be enough. They just don't want that kind of thing. They're against it. Now, I do believe that people that are anti-immigration, they use some arguments that are obviously contradictory, not really thought through. Like the whole idea that we can't let the Mexicans in here, that they'll compete with us. So, but globalism, this is Gary's view, is necessary, nothing you could do about it. So we don't want to let Mexicans in here. And also Gary is like, and they can't do the jobs. There's no jobs for those stupid kinds of people they have in other countries. But our jobs are moving down to Mexico. It seems pretty obvious that it'd be better to have immigrants come to the United States legally and we compete with them while they're getting minimum wage. The ones at least that are driving down the wages to minimum wage. And that still would be better off than competing with them in Bangladesh, where the minimum wage you're competing with is now pennies an hour, and it's in another country, and so you get zero, and there's no competition at that point. You just lost. However, if they saw the wisdom of that reality, they still wouldn't be for it, because it comes down to their personal preferences, like whether they like whether they like vanilla or whether they like chocolate, whether they like an authoritarian leader or a soft-spoken leader, right? So we're going to have differences, and we're going to have them for a long time. And I've noticed both sides have this fantasy of, well, the Democrats are like, well, demographically, our turn is coming. It'll be us forever. We'll have a dynasty. And the Republicans always think, well, it'll never be. Look what happened. It'll never be another. With such a landslide of him losing by only 3 million votes, popular vote-wise, we'll have an electoral college locked down forever. And would that be better? Would that be good? I mean, if one party has a dynasty, first of all, dynasties are corrupt. Like in Hawaii, I lived in Hawaii for a decade. They had nothing but Democrats, and so it got corrupt because one party rule is corrupt. And guess what else? Anybody that might have become a Republican, and gone into politics, pretty much is going to become a Democrat and be a conservative Democrat, right? You'll join the party. If there's a party monopoly and you want to get into politics, you join that party. It doesn't matter what your philosophy is. You'll worry about that later. And the other side is not going to go away. If Trump gets 8 years, and then it's Donald Jr. for 8 years, and then it's Ivanka for 8 years, and then it's Eric for 8 years, and we have a huge Trump dynasty. The liberals aren't going to go away. They're just going to get more pissed off. And if it goes the other way, and we did have Barack, and then Hillary, and then whomever next, and whomever next, and whomever next, and if those whomever next turned out to be some Bernie Sanders, I'd be for that. Do you suppose that that's going to turn the conservatives around, and they're going to suddenly support a Bernie Sanders or a Hillary Clinton? Or no, they're going to be getting more and more pissed, more and more bottled up. That's not what's supposed to happen. If you wanted that to work out, then you would actually have to have a party that tried to, like they all say, lead for everybody, take everybody's view into account. Not just say, hey, we're 51% of the people and we know what we want to do, so fuck you guys. No, you actually have to take into account, it's like if you're elected, let's say a community's building a school, and you're elected the foreman. They're like, you know how to build shit, and you're elected the foreman. You have some power to make decisions, right? You've been asked to do that. You might make some hard decisions. But you can't pretend that half of the people aren't there, their opinion doesn't exist, or that you just ignoring their opinion is going to turn out okay. And in the case of this nation, the United States, we're heading towards a civil war because we have differences that are just irreconcilable, whatever. I don't believe in torture. You, on the other side, want to argue with me about whether it's efficacious or not. I don't think it is. But I don't care if it is. I don't want to torture. I don't want to preemptively murder citizens, even if you could prove that made it, safer. I don't want to do that. That's not. I would rather live with some risk in the world rather than preemptively, murder fascist approach. My concept of craving safety doesn't go anywhere near that level of being willing to do that. So I don't want to have secret torture prisons. I don't want to wage war all over the world preemptively. Right? And I don't think that it's efficacious for any of my goals. I don't think it makes my nation richer or helps us in any way. Right? The people that it has made rich, I don't think that they're helping my nation be better. They're letting my nation fall apart. So that's my proof that my philosophy is, my proof to myself that my philosophy is going to be more efficient and work better. But that's not the only reason I believe it. It's also because I don't like torture. Right? I'd be willing to pay some price of maybe there'll be some danger involved with not torturing people, and I would mitigate that. I would pay that price afterwards, figure out how to mitigate that separately instead of start torturing. And they want to torture. Like Trump said, it's like, oh, even if it doesn't work, they deserve it. He's into it. So that's not going to be reconciled, right? This country is going towards a civil war, right? And both sides seem to think that's okay because they'll get the leverage and they'll win, so it'll be fine. But it won't be. That's not how this works. You know, conservatives that think that liberalism is going to go away or be embarrassed away, or now people hate feminism, so it's all the way out. You're dreaming. And it's stupid. I mean, I don't think you guys, conservatives, are going to disappear, you know, in my lifetime or overnight, or in a sense at all, right? I think that conservatism will evolve, liberalism will evolve. It might become very different in 100 years, but the basic sentiments of a person with a certain set of tastes and preferences about the kind of society that makes them feel it's appropriate that they could support and be behind is a different kind of society than I want. And I could compromise, and I could compromise to a huge degree, actually, because I think with federalism, I think it's ridiculous to make abortion illegal, but we certainly have gotten to a point where they don't seem to be giving into it. They want to make it impossible to get an abortion. What are we going to do? You have millions of people down in Mississippi. They want things a certain way. They think that's murder, and that's the kind of thing you can make illegal, murder. Then we might just have to live with that. But I don't see that the conservative side wants to grant the same sort of thing in their concept of states' rights. And I don't think most liberals, most left-leaning people agree with me that the conservatives can have to have their own place to be wrong. That I think is wrong. But they need that place. Why? Because democracy, there's only so much, and when you can only compromise when you agree. Like, only a bunch of Christians can argue about how many angels fit on the head of a pin. If you're not a Christian, it's like you don't even have a place in that argument. Conservatives can argue with conservatives, and liberals can argue with conservatives, and patriotic Americans of both liberal and conservative could agree on things. That's happened in the past. That's been possible to find the things they agree on, maybe infrastructure or whatnot. We've obviously gotten to a point where we're evolved beyond that now, though. And we have differences that are not going to just go away. They're not going to go away if one side loses elections many, many times in a row. They're not going to go away if there's a coalition party that can dominate, right? So people don't seem to like my idea that we're going to have to split this nation up in order to not come to blows. And a lot of people think, well, no, we'd come to blows even if we were two separate countries. Well, yeah, that might be inevitable too, but it's certainly getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. It'd be better the sooner we split in 2 or 5 or 10 or reinstitute federalism, the better, right? Before we hate each other so much that the first thing we do as an independent nation is form armies and attack each other. And we are well beyond the point of trying to convince each other things that we are so opposite of. People convincing me that the TSA is useful. Torture, useful. Drone robot bombing, the whole world. We're bombing like 70%. We bombed and or sent, Army Ranger types into like 70% of the countries just in 2015. It's going on right now, like a war against. I'm not for that, and I'm not going to become for that. And the people that are for that aren't going to become against it. It's not a matter of a rational explanation. It's the kind of world they want to live in that I don't want to live in. And we are past the point of trying to convince each other of all of these things. Certainly there's some things we could discuss Still, if we tried, I don't think we're in a state where people aren't even wanting to try to do that. We hate on other groups. We science people groups that we hate them. But most of the important things right now have gone well past that point of where we're going to agree. We're not having a rational argument about whether we should torture people. And that I might go, oh, okay, now I'm for it. That's not going to happen. Right? And it's not just me. There's many things on the other side, and that all of us listening and involved in this conversation, that we feel there's extreme people on with differing views, and the puzzle is not how to get them to agree with us anymore. The puzzle is how we're going to fucking possibly live together. You know? And people don't follow history enough. But the signs of history right now are that this is coming to violence. And it's only going to be avoided if we take that seriously. And frankly, I don't expect people to do that. You're just, there's too much irrationality. So that's that. And tribalism. You need to kill Pyrrho, according to me. So yeah, Infinity says splitting the nation up means we come to blows. Well, Infinity, we're coming to blows already. Right? That's like, well, if we get a divorce, we're going to hate each other so much we're going to go over to each other's house and attack each other. Well, if that's true, then probably staying in the same house isn't a good idea either. Okay? So it's either it might be done by the Supreme Court that Trump will put in there, that, they put states' rights, Roe v. Wade goes out the window, states are having all kinds of restrictive voting laws and abortion's illegal, punish the mother, and that'll be just fine. We'll just, as long as we're all married officially still, then it'll be peaceful. It doesn't look too peaceful to me, Infinity. And I actually disagree. I think it'll be easier for gangs of crazy people to riot with the current way we have it than if we actually had our own establishments and something to lose from that. Let's go back to tribalism, Alexander Zapata said. See, so I'm inventing a tribal, I assume you mean tribalism. I assume that I am creating this illusion, right? I'm creating this concept that there is this conflict of unreconciled difference. Yes, Pikachu, I am against violence. I would like to avoid this violence. And I think the way to avoid violence, in my experience, one way to avoid violence is if you're in a group and things are starting to get violent, one way to avoid that is to walk away and stop arguing, stop fighting with that group, and go do your own thing. Well, Alexander, maybe you're a fucking idiot, okay? I think probably so. I did not say we disagree, so we got to fight or segregate. I said the disagreements that we actually do have are so severe There is no reconciling them, and just winning an election and ignoring what the other people think is not a solution to that. It's already happening. I'm not inventing it. I am bringing this up. I'm obviously not the one that has invented these differences. And if you don't see the differences, well, that's why I'm making a video, because it's obvious, and you must be in denial because you don't want mommy and daddy to get a divorce, even though everybody seems to hate each other. Oh, evidently I gave you an aneurysm. Durururu, Alexander says. Oh, okay. Well, I see your point now. What does Piro want to segregate from? I am saying that in this country, there is zero chance we're going to agree on leadership that the whole nation could get behind. It has gone too far for that to happen. You guys are just like, it's astounding. I mean, the internet has just become a psychological thing. It's 100% about the psychology. So you want to try to catch me because of the opinion. So you want to kill people? We got to kill Pearson. We got to kill you. Yeah, of course. That's what I said. You've got to try to kill me. Piro wants to secede from the Trump Union. No, I believe we could just disassociate, or we might just have to embrace federalism again. How many separations? Wolf, I don't know. How did they make the country in the first place? How did they make 50 states? Don't you realize if you have more than one state, then there has to be infinite number of states? Oh, very, very, very good answer to my point. So, because you're incapable of dealing with the actual topic of this video, which is that these differences are severe kinds of differences of which there is not a long-term agreement. We will not agree based on agreeing on the same facts. Whether or not, we haven't noticed that because we don't agree on the same set of facts. Right? But it's quite clear that, to me, that people that are pro-torture are a lot like Trump. And if we convince them that it doesn't work very well, he'll be like, yeah, but they deserve it. Well, Pikachu, the way it would have to work if we did it peacefully, instead of just some civil war breaking out and we see where the battle lines are, is you would have to have a constitutional convention, a convention at that level, and you would have to split the country up, and then you would debate. You would have new unions form. If you couldn't agree, I guess you could just break it down into the states. Fuck you, Alexander. I'm not going to answer your questions. Dirty, dirty, dirty. Fuck you.